Good evening, or perhaps good morning. You are here with me, and we are about to look back at an epic of American history that seems, to the casual observer, to be nothing more than 4 years of brutal, bloody inevitability. But for those who lived it, for those whose world dissolved in fire and blood, it was the moment when the very soul of a nation was rendered down to its raw, base elements. The story of the American Republic is often told as a tale of parchment and ideals, of founding fathers in powdered wigs debating liberty. But that is only half the truth. The other half is a brutal, agonizing process of construction, demolition, and reconstruction. It is a story of ash and iron. Think of the subtitle itself. Ash, the pulverized remains of what was. The institutions, the social contracts, the fortunes and the lives that were consumed by the inferno of civil war. The plantation system, a society built on the monstrous paradox of liberty and bondage, had to be burned to nothing before anything new could rise. And iron, the unforgiving, hard and necessary material of recreation. The iron will of a president, the iron determination of the emancipated, the iron discipline of a new constitutional order. This, my friends, is not merely history. It is the crucible of a nation. Our journey begins not with a grand political declaration, but with the quiet sound of a hammer striking an anvil in a small, forgotten corner of Virginia, just as the first shot was fired at Fort Sumter. The weight of the chain. The year is 1860. The Republic is a contradiction wrapped in a star-spangled banner. 11 million human beings, nearly 1/3 of the population, are bound in chattel slavery. In the sprawling cotton fields and the manicured estates of the South, an entire economic and social system, a civilization they called it, was built on the premise that one man could own another. Let us meet Elias. He is 24 years old and he has known nothing but the back-breaking sun and the ceaseless fear of a tobacco plantation in Prince William County. Elias is an artisan, a blacksmith by trade, though his forge is meager, his tools sparse, and his products, mostly hinges, simple plows, and repairs, all belong to the master. He is an enslaved man with the mind of an engineer and the spirit of a free man, trapped by the color of his skin. Elias often works late, the rhythmic clang of his hammer against the iron ringing out in the cool night air. He isn't just forging simple repairs, he's forging a deep, unspoken resentment. Every piece of iron he shapes is a mocking reminder of his captivity. The chain around his neck, the padlock on the plantation storeroom, the leg irons used on runaways. When Abraham Lincoln is elected, the air in the South turns brittle and tense. Secession, the desperate act of tearing the nation apart to preserve the peculiar institution, becomes an obsession. The white planter class, fearing the loss of their wealth and power, begin to stockpile weapons. One cold afternoon, Elias is ordered to forge cannonballs, small, crude spheres of death for a newly formed militia. As the molten iron flows, orange and blinding, Elias feels a cold dread. He is being forced to forge the very instruments that will be used to crush his hope for freedom, the instruments that will set the entire nation on fire. He finishes his work, but as he cools the last cannonball, he marks it subtly with a small, unique scratch, a secret signature of resistance. This tiny act of defiance is all he has. The iron, the material of his bondage, will now also be the material of his reckoning. The South secedes, the bombs fall on Fort Sumter, and the long night begins. 2. The Crucible of Ash. The war once started moved with a horrifying speed. It was a destructive force that cared nothing for pedigree or principles, only for annihilation. It reduced beautiful landscapes to mud, grand ideas to cynical tactics, and men to dust. In the North, we find Eleanor Thorne, a wealthy abolitionist in Boston. Eleanor had always fought her battles with the pen and the podium, funding the Underground Railroad and publishing fierce anti-slavery pamphlets. She believed in moral suasion, the power of reasoned argument. But as the casualty lists began to fill the newspapers, Antietam, Gettysburg, Fredericksburg, Eleanor realized that the moral argument had failed. The only way to cleanse the nation was through the crucible of war. Her world, too, was reduced to ash, the ash of her comfortable certainty, the ash of her liberal hope that bloodshed could be avoided. Eleanor throws herself into the war effort. She helps organize nurses and supplies. But soon she grows frustrated with the bureaucratic distance from the true horror. She volunteers to travel south, becoming a teacher and aid worker for the contraband camps, the shanty towns that sprang up around Union lines, filled with formerly enslaved people seeking refuge. It is here that her ideals are tested. In the camps, she sees the sheer physical cost of slavery, the scars, the illiteracy, the deep, abiding trauma. She is confronted not with the ideal of the noble savage, but with a complex, impoverished, and struggling people, fiercely determined to claim their humanity. Her role shifts from benefactor to witness, from teacher to learner. The academic theories of abolition are replaced by the stark reality of human need. Back in Virginia, Elias's plantation is finally overrun by Union troops during the tumultuous Wilderness Campaign. As the master flees, the enslaved community erupts in a mix of terrified joy and dizzying uncertainty. Elias, clutching a small, worn, leather-bound book, an arithmetic text he taught himself to read from, walks away from the ashes of his former life. He joins the Union Army. 3. Forging the Man of Iron. Elias's path takes him to the newly formed United States Colored Troops, or USCT. The irony is not lost on him. The very instrument of war he was forced to forge for his masters, he now wields for his own liberation. He is given a rifle, a uniform, and a new name, Sergeant Elias Washington. This is the chapter of Iron. The USCT soldiers fought with a ferocity born of personal stake. For white soldiers, the war was for Union. For black soldiers, it was for life, liberty, and the right to exist as a human being. The casualty rates for black soldiers were shockingly high. They were often assigned the most dangerous entrenched positions, and if captured, faced certain execution or re-enslavement. Elias is present at the infamous Battle of the Crater near Petersburg, Virginia. It is a disaster. A massive mine is detonated under Confederate lines, but poor Union leadership and the prejudice of white soldiers refusing to support the black troops leads to a hellish inferno. The ash pit created by the mine's explosion remains a smoking, swirling center of death and confusion.